Come on. Good morning, everyone. How are you? This is Enrique Sanchez of Spanish United, founder and director. This morning, we have a very special guest. Would you be kind enough to introduce yourselves to the audience, please?
Yes, my name is Jenna Karvunidis, and I am a housing rights attorney in Los Angeles.
Welcome. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
As we had spoken over Messenger, there is a big crisis going on with housing, especially in the city of Los Angeles, with rent increase and lack of rent protections and all that. And it's kind of interesting how we met because I had saw a comment that you had made on a post on Channel 11. I responded to this lady, and then she responded back. So that's why I felt, interested in speaking with you because we in Spanish United, we also advocate for tenants and Hispanics that are affected the most when it comes to lack of rent control and rent protections. So we would like to know more about of what you do.
Yeah, great. So I work, in the public interest sector on the side of people who are being evicted from their homes. So, my opponent in court are the landlords. And
Hmm.
normally in the legal field, when you have opposing sides, the sides can be rather cordial toward one another. It's like, okay, if you're having let's say it's like intellectual property or some other area of
Right.
law, or even like when people go to buy a home and each side has an attorney, there's a uh, get along well with each other, mentality, like just do what you can to get along, have professional courtesy with each other.
Right.
But in this area, there is such an ideological divide between attorneys who work on the defense side, as I do, and on the landlord side. So it can get quite contentious in court.
I can imagine, and especially now with the issue of tenants and landlords and properties. I have seen many cases where people do get violent because for many people, ending up evicted or displaced is a matter of life and death. And many corporate landlords, they just don't care. All they care about is maximizing their profits. And it creates homelessness. It also creates social instability because when you have people that are displaced, it causes problems, and a lot of people don't realize that. And I think it's very important that there needs to be people, that need to be protected by protection clauses because there's a lot of people that they are middle class people, and they need to survive. To me, it's counterproductive where someone works in the city but they have to live 5 hours away just to afford rent. To me it's absurd.
I absolutely agree with you. I do want to just caution something you said, kind of jumped out at me. I kind of want to address,
Sure.
about it being a life or death situation. While that is true, it is actually a tactic of landlord attorneys to accuse tenants who are being evicted of being violent. So they'll say things like, in court, they'll say, Your Honor, I would like for my client to be escorted, by a security officer out to the parking lot because we're so afraid of our tenant because his life is threatened because of this eviction. They turn it around, acting like the tenants who are being evicted are the ones who are being violent and threatening the landlords. When actually, what's happening here is economic violence on
Hmm.
a mass scale against lower and middle class people being evicted.
Hmm. Yes,
Not to
and
disagree with you, I just wanted to point that
no, no,
out.
no, no, it's fine. It's funny. And you actually brought in a good point because I was actually reading on the other day that California has a little low, not too many people know about that landlords can accuse tenants of violence or just the fact that they're poor, and then the police will, have more rights to get rid of them. And I think it's very cruel that they're doing that.
It is cruel. And also sometimes landlords, maybe I shouldn't talk about all these things because I don't want anyone listening to this podcast to be a landlord to think, oh, great idea. So I will stop there at giving away the landlord tactics. But yeah, they do. There's a lot of unfairness going on. It's not just that the laws in place are unfair. It's that there's also a lack of accountability in the judicial system when it comes to eviction. The
Right.
unlawful retainer process is what it's called.
Absolutely. And I feel that there needs to be more reforms because the law in general doesn't seem to be equal. It's like it seems that if it favors one group over the other instead of having partial impartiality.
Absolutely. And it comes back to basic capitalism. I don't know what ethos you're in, but when we have a capitalist structure like this, it's highly unregulated. I mean, there are regulations in some ways, but it just comes down to poor people being taken advantage of in general
Right.
and lack of equity and equality.
Right.
So
I personally myself am against capitalism. I believe in capitalism with morals. It's like no one can win until everybody wins because all people have to participate in the economy. So I believe in a fair capitalism where everybody wins, not where just a few win and everybody else loses.
yeah, and that system is not quite there yet where we are.
Right.
But I have to say, I have to give Los Angeles credit. We do have a huge, a bad reputation for all these homeless people, in California and
Right.
Los Angeles specifically. But the reason why there are so many here is because there are so many protections and there are so many resources, which are so sorely lacking in other areas. It's kind of like
Oh
saying, oh,
yeah.
there's more abortions in California. Yeah, because you can have them.
Yeah, because it's common sense. Like if you go to red states, for example, you don't have a lot of protections, even though you may not have homelessness on a larger scale as we do. And it's more affordable to live because nobody wants to live there. It's like most people are fleeing from red states because people don't have protections in all areas, including civil rights and human rights.
Yeah, and it's really life limiting too. I mean, you have a shorter lifespan if you don't have access to medical care, to housing, to the food that you need. They die younger. Look at the statistics about which states have the longevity. It's places with better social protections.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And another question I wanted to ask you, do you also as well cover in the areas of housing discrimination? Because there are people within, our movement that have told me that there is access to low income housing, but depending on the areas that they live, they feel that because of their last name that they're not able to get into affordable housing when it's available to everyone. So do you also handle that area of expertise?
So, yes and no. So, discrimination is a defense when it comes to housing. When you're already in a unit and you're being evicted, discrimination is a defense you can use to be able to stay if you can show that the landlord has discriminated against you. Um, However, what you're talking about is more of what's called an affirmative lawsuit. That's where the person being discriminated against is the plaintiff. I don't know anybody's familiarity with the legal process, but the plaintiff, you can think the word complaint. The
I am.
plaintiff.
Before I became a teacher, I did consider becoming a lawyer one time ago.
Oh, well, wonderful. We need more. Your audience may not be familiar with the difference between an affirmative suit and defense. So, if someone is being discriminated against and they want to start a lawsuit and file a complaint, therefore being the plaintiff against someone discriminating against them because they were not able to get the apartment. Let's say they applied for the apartment, they weren't able to get it. They believe it was based on their last name or ethnicity or whatever protected category. While that would be unlawful behavior, in order to pursue an action for that, they would have to find an attorney and pay. There are very few low cost and free legal services for people who are wanting to start lawsuits. The Unfortunately, that is an area of law that is lagging. So while we do have like right to counsel is coming soon in Los Angeles, where if you are being evicted from your home, you have a right to an attorney. That's not quite the law yet, but that is the direction that we're going. We hope to see that in 2025. That type of discrimination as a defense to a lawsuit that you are in as a defendant in a unit that you already own, yes, that is while it is difficult to prove, it is a defense that is available.
Awesome, perfect. Another question I wanted to ask, in your area of practice, like what would you say the ratio would be of Hispanic people that you have represented in clients and in cases? If you could give us like a little, feedback on that.
I would say a disproportionate number of our clients are Hispanic. A very large portion of my clients are monolingual Spanish speakers. So I use an interpreter even to speak with them. And right now I'm trying my best to learn a little Spanish, but I'm with work and everything, I'm not quite there to be able to speak with my clients, directly, but absolutely a very large portion of Hispanic. I mean, that's also reflective of the population in LA.
Mm,
I would say, there is a large Hispanic population to begin with, but certainly the unlawful detainer court, which is where the evictions are happening, a vast majority are of Hispanic
that's
origin.
good. That's good because a lot of Hispanic people, unfortunately, in many cases and circumstances, they don't get represented, and they tend to be underrepresented in many cases. Like for example, there was a case about a year ago where I didn't go to court, but I did represent this what do you call that, this fruit vendor that was selling merchandise, and he was being harassed by these college students. And there was another case where there was another fruit vendor that was being harassed by the owners of this bar over in the Santa Clarita area. So we wrote a lot of petitions, we wrote letters, and we even boycotted this business where these two, owners were harassing this fruit vendor until the business went under. Because it's like, I could understand if the fruit vendor was loitering in the person's, property, but the guy was nowhere near the bar. It's like he was on the other side of the freeway. So it's like the owners of that business actually went out of their way to harass this poor guy that was just trying to make a living for his family.
Absolutely. And that's a really important aspect of our legal system is actually activism. So that activism reaches judges because at the end of the day, right, you may have a law on the books, but how that law is interpreted and how it's carried out in courtrooms, that's entirely up to the judge. I mean, of course, there's an appeal process. If for
Right.
some reason, that it was a blatant, abuse of power
Error.
on the part of the attorney or the
The
judge.
judge.
But so activism is so important because you do change the hearts and minds of people, and then a very unpopular judge isn't going to last. So reputations really do matter, and they're really built on these social movements that happen at the ground level. You don't have to be an attorney, you don't have to be anybody who has knowledge of the legal process at all. If you see something that isn't right, and you make enough noise and have enough support, it'll make its way up.
Oh, absolutely. And when I started Spanish United 3 years ago, that was actually one of my first cases to actually boycott a business that was, abusing an Hispanic people. Because it's like it was very cruel what these people did to this fruit vendors. Like, he was just minding his own business. And for them to actually do that, number one, they were probably miserable in their own life, or number two, that they were not doing very good in their own business. And I feel that's probably the reason why their business went under so quickly, because they were just, very poor managers that, people just decided, okay, you guys are not doing a good job in your own, business. We're not going to support you anymore. And I think that's the reason why they went under so quickly.
Yeah, that's good to hear too. That's a heartwarming story to hear about a neighborhood because sometimes, people who have certain social beliefs, they'll be the NIMBY crowd. I don't know if you're familiar with that phrase. It's the not in my backyard crowd. So they'll
Right.
say, "Oh yes, I'm all about say affordable housing, but don't you put up an affordable housing unit next to my house." Um,
Exactly. That's actually how it is with a lot of coastal elite liberals. That yes, we're for social justice, but don't bring the social justice where I live.
Absolutely, and that's really terrible.
Oh
And it
yeah.
sounds like I'm glad that did not play out with the fruit vendor because it
Oh
sounds like
yeah. Yeah,
people came
absolutely.
together.
Absolutely. And that's what we do in Spanish United. We handle cases on a case-to-case basis. Like in many cases, I've had people contact me, or in many cases where I've actually represented people or done for people, has actually been where I've actually, people have sent me a video footage. Hey, so and so has been abused by somebody. I would contact them directly, or I would contact the institute directly where it happened, and then I would work out some type of arrangement to get the problem resolved. And there was another case over in San Diego where another fruit vendor was actually being harassed by a group of college girls this was like around 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. So they also did something similar where they were just throwing stuff at him. They were making fun of him. They must have been drunk or something, but the fruit vendor was the food vendor was scared because it's like, these are white college girls with money. He doesn't speak English, and he had his camera on because God forbid if he didn't have his camera, they could have accused him of, assault, and then his life would have been over. So we intervened in that aspect as well. I actually wrote a few letters to the dean of the University of San Diego, and those girls were actually expelled and permanently barred from the University of San Diego because of that stunt that they pulled.
Oh my gosh, and that is such a great learning opportunity for everyone else. Like there are consequences to your actions. And sometimes people think, they exploit certain people for their fear of the police. I don't know if the fruit vendor was documented or not, but I know that there are undocumented people have a certain
Right.
distrust of the police and the police system, not realizing that there's a difference between state police and feds.
Right, of
I,
course.
that it's not an overlap there. It's not up to local government to enforce any federal laws. But they don't know that. And so there's a distrust of the police there. And it sounds like these girls were exploiting that for their own entertainment. I'm
Right.
glad to hear that it came to justice for them.
Right, right, and that's a problem that many people assume that all Hispanics, regardless of their citizens or not, they don't have any status, and since really is no protections for Hispanic people at this moment when it comes to civil protections, because Hispanics are not a race or an ethnicity, so we don't fall under any protected group for now. So a lot of people think it's okay to abuse Hispanic people. It's okay to mistreat them because they're not going to say anything and we could do whatever we want with them. And this is where we come in. We try to put a stop to that because Hispanics are the largest minority in this country. We contribute a lot in many sectors of society, and we should be treated with dignity as respect. It's like, why should we be bullied just because people assume that we don't have any status?
That is interesting. I do want to make a distinction between people who are just not just, but of Hispanic origin, and also people who are undocumented, who are actually from a country of origin, because your place of origin, that is a protected class. So if someone is discriminating against you because of your country of origin, it's, your alienation is what that is. So that is actually a protected class on the federal level. So if
Mm,
someone is, say, not giving you housing because you're born in Mexico, that is a protected area. Not to give legal advice. I do want to,
no, it's
I meant to
fine.
preface this earlier. The things that I am saying now, I am a lawyer. I am not your lawyer. If Do not rely on the things that I am saying to navigate your own legal circumstances. I have to say that, or else I get in trouble with the bar. Because I'm happy to discuss legal issues, but I don't want anybody to think, oh, Jenna was on a podcast. She's my
Ah,
lawyer.
no,
I'm gonna go do exactly what she said. And then, that gets misinterpreted or something like that. So anyway, I got that out there. I made my disclaimer now.
no, no, it's
But there
fine.
are maybe more protections than people realize.
Right. No, no, that's fine. And like I said, this is a open podcast. We don't promote any type of agenda. We just talk about the social issues that are affecting the community, and how we could come up with different alternatives to try to resolve. It's basically what it is. That's what we do in all of our podcasts in Spanish United. There's no political agenda. There's no agenda of any kind. I think there needs to be more open discussion, because I feel that in today's environment, because of political correctness, if I would say, people are not open to talking about certain things. But I'm talking about things that are actually affecting the community or society as a whole. So just to let you know, my disclaimer is that we are about having open discussion with everyone. We're not a political organization, and we're about trying to find ways in making society and the communities that we live in better for everyone.
Well, that sounds like a fabulous mission. Absolutely. We can't be afraid to have conversations too. It's issues of race and ethnicity and national origin, these are difficult topics to talk about. And you're engaging with me, a white person, what do I know? I'm not even from California. So no, I appreciate the open dialogue, because I'm always interested in learning about other people's experience, especially with my clients. I don't have the lived experience and the life experience to know, what a lot of the things are like
Hmm.
that my clients do go through. So I do my best to understand, but it's always nice to be able to have an open dialogue.
Oh, absolutely, and that's the whole purpose of this podcast, is to have open dialogue with everyone. I wanted to ask you a question before we go. Are you of Greek background? Because your name kind of sounds Greek. Forgive me for asking.
No, I'm not. My husband, I am married, and actually, oddly enough, he's not even Greek either. His father was born and raised in Istanbul, but a few generations before that, they were Greek. So that's where we get our Greek last name from. But I'm not actually personally Greek at all.
Oh, okay, okay.
No, I am. My 23 and me is just white girl.
That's interesting. Then it's interesting. All right, it was, just curious. I wanted to tell you, Jenna, we have come to the end of our podcast. I want to thank you so much for being on the show. I truly appreciate you having you as a guest. So as soon as I get off the air, I will start putting everything together, and I will email you and also inbox you the podcast, and you can share it with, whoever you want to share it with.
All right. Thank you so much for having me, and best of luck.
Likewise, have yourself a wonderful, wonderful day.
You too. Bye.
Bye bye.